Got a question or two. Like, Johnny,
I don't have it.
when you talk into the mic, make sure you pull it down.
Who's supposed to be keeping up with it?
It was on there. Miriam, when you talk into the mic, make sure you pull it down. Well, you can be this far. Snap your Mary, their direction, and you can talk into it. You don't have to hold it. Yeah, just talk at it. Did you turn it on? Is it green? I can hear so see.
It's almost sacrilegious to not have the better thing right now. So
I know, I hate
I don't
that.
always do it though.
I got a wrinkle.
Mindy, we ready? I will call the regular meeting of the Everman City Council to order. It is Tuesday, May 2nd, 2023, and the time is 6:31. Everybody, please rise for a moment of silence, followed by pledge of allegiance. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so first thing, adding something. Craig has a duty to perform.
good evening, Mayor and Council. This evening, I'm glad to share with you that we are bringing on a new reserve police officer onto the force. His name is Anas Dagmumi. Did I say that right? Yes. I have been practicing that for like 10 minutes. You didn't realize that. Sir, if I can get you and your family to come on up here. So Anas actually comes to us. He just recently graduated from the Academy, Dallas College Law Enforcement Academy. He also serves as an investigator for the federal government. He's actually been helping us out here recently on the case with Noel as well. He was here just a couple of days ago, assisting with setting up some of the searches and things, as well as just helping out in the background. So we're extremely blessed to have him. He speaks how many languages? Three different languages. He brings a unique skill set to the department. So we're happy to have him here and being a part of our family here. So who's going to pin your badge? All right. So I'm going to let you hold on to that. Just hold on to it for right now. All right. Oh, there you go. If you would just raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. Do solemnly swear. That I will faithfully execute. The duties of the office. Of the city of Everman. Police officer. Of the state of Texas. And will to the best. Of my ability. Preserve, protect, and defend. The Constitution and laws. Of the United States. And of this state. So help me God. Congratulations. Let me get your signature right here. Go ahead. There's two signatures, one right here. This is one here. Thank you much. All right. And then when you do it, turn this way.
You just took your chest.
There we go. Yes, you can do
Oh. Have it.
Thank you much. Pleasure. No, thank you. And just one quick testament. Anas is actually from Morocco. And you immigrated here to the country, what point? 22 years ago. And became a citizen and now serves with us as a police officer. So we're very glad to have him as a part of the family. So look forward to it. Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Chief,
Yes, ma'am.
I think he has your ink pen.
Oh, you are doing about that. Excellent, thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Really?
Consent agenda, we have none, so we'll drop down to presentations. Item A, audit report presentation. Fiscal year 2022. Snow.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Kathy Williams, a partner with Snow Garrett Williams. And I'm just going to take you through a few items in your fiscal year 22 audit report. If you'll open those up and turn to page 3. We'll start on page 3 with the independent auditor's report. You'll see there that this is the audit of the city's financial statements as of and for the fiscal year ended September 30th, 2022. And then that second paragraph right there at the top of the page says that in our opinion, the financial statements are presented fairly in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. So that's that clean or unmodified opinion that you as a council want to see. I will point out there at the bottom, the emphasis of a matter, the change in accounting principle. One of several things that delayed us getting this audit to you this year and complicated things a little bit. One of the items that contributed to that is a new governmental accounting standard that was placed into effect for this fiscal year. It's GASB statement number 87, and it was for leases, and it just changes a whole lot of the accounting for both leased assets and the related liabilities. So that was one of the items that contributed to us being a little bit later than normal this year. If you'll turn now over to page 8, in the management's discussion and analysis, this section right here, this first section of your audit is a really good comparative section and has a lot of things that you may want to look at, but I'm just going to point out a few of them. Under government-wide financial analysis, you'll see there where it says that your net position may serve over time as a useful indicator of the government's financial position. And the city's assets exceeded your liabilities and deferred inflows for fiscal year 22 by $7.3 million. So you'll see there that the total assets of the city, which is all of your governmental activities and business type activities put together, were $20,416,702. Total liabilities were $12,889,000. And then you had deferred inflows of resources of $183,000. When you subtract the liabilities and deferred inflows from your assets, that resulted in that net position at the end of September of $7,343,891. Now, much of that is your net investment in capital assets is over $5.8 million. 1.4 million of that net position is restricted, and the unrestricted portion is that $69,469. If you'll turn now to page 12, still in your management's discussion and analysis, on page 12, you'll see their capital assets towards the bottom part of the page. The city's investment in total capital assets for both your governmental and business type activities was over $15.8 million. And it lists there the bullet points, major capital asset events that occurred during the 22 fiscal year. You actually had over $7 million of capital asset additions last year. Purchase of a new fire truck, street improvements for Christopher Street and Race Street that were rebuilt, dispatch center rebuild, completion of this building, and completion of significant water line replacements. If you'll turn to the next page, on page 13, you'll see there, as I mentioned, the total was over $15.8 million for your capital assets, and that included $9.2 million for your governmental activities and $6.6 million for your business type activities. Then the bottom part of page 13, you'll see there your total outstanding debt at the end of last year was almost $10.4 million. That includes your bonds, certificates of obligation, tax notes, a new note payable for the fire truck, lease liabilities. Like I said, that's a new category that we had to categorize those a little bit differently. Now, if you'll turn over to page 19, we'll start with your governmental funds balance sheet. And now we're looking at more on a fund basis. So you have your general fund, your 2020 certificate of obligation capital project fund, Economic Development Corporation Fund, and then a few other governmental funds that are grouped together. And I'll be referring to that total column on the right-hand side of page 19. Total assets for your governmental funds were at $2.2 million, and most of that on the governmental basis is in cash and investments. Your liabilities, and again, these are on more of a current basis in your governmental funds, were $1,756,586, and your ending fund balance of your governmental funds was $345,908. If you'll turn to the next page, on page 20, we're still looking at your governmental funds, and this is your statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balances for all of those same funds. Total revenues for the last fiscal year were $6,754,708. That included intergovernmental revenue, which is primarily your grant revenue, of over $998,000 for the year. Expenditures for the city for last year on the governmental funds were over $10.5 million, and $4 million of that was capital outlay. And then when you subtract those expenditures from your revenues, that resulted in a deficiency of revenues under expenditures of $3.7 million for your governmental funds. Then we add back your other financing sources, which were primarily proceeds from debt and leases, and those totaled over $1.2 million. So the net decrease in fund balance for the governmental funds was $2.5 million. And most of that's in that capital project fund. As the money is spent and as the capital projects are completed, that fund goes down. So that's where most of that decrease comes from. So, and really also when you put back in that capital outlay, as I mentioned, you had significant capital outlay this year. Okay, so we'll turn now to page 22. We'll start with your enterprise fund, which is your water and sewer fund. You'll see there your assets, total assets towards the middle of page 22 are $8,567,395. Over $6.6 million of that total is in your capital assets in your water and sewer fund, which is primarily your water and sewer system. You also had current assets of $1.1 million and then restricted assets of $794,000. Total liabilities for your enterprise fund were just over $5 million, $5,067,042 in total. And then your net position was almost $3.5 million. You'll look at the next page, on page 23, you'll see your statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position. Again, for your water and sewer fund, total operating revenues for last fiscal year were $2,496,773. Operating expenses were $1,936,000. So your operating income for the year was just over $560,000. Your non-operating expenses, which is primarily because of interest expense, were $40,088. You also had great capital grants and contributions, which is primarily grant funding of nearly $350,000 in your water and sewer fund. When we put all of those things together, you had an increase in net position for your water and sewer fund last year of $870,318. And I mentioned this last year. It's really good that the city continues to increase your net position in your water and sewer fund so that the cost to maintain that system and to have improvements in your water and sewer system, it's very important to have those funds available, as well as to pay the debt that's outstanding in your water and sewer fund. If you'll turn now back to page 65. If you can't go to sleep tonight, you can read between pages 22 and 65. But on page 65, you'll find your independent auditor's report on internal control over financial reporting and on compliance and other matters based on an audit of financial statements performed in accordance with government auditing standards. As that title says, it covers two areas: internal control and compliance. Under the report on internal control towards the bottom of the page, it explains there that a deficiency in internal control exists when the design or operation of a control does not allow management or employees in the normal course of performing their assigned functions to prevent or detect and correct misstatements on a timely basis. And then it describes two different types of deficiencies. A material weakness is a deficiency or a combination of deficiencies in internal control such that there's a reasonable possibility that a material misstatement of your financial statements will not be prevented or detected and corrected on a timely basis. That's the worst of the two. A significant deficiency is a deficiency in internal control that is less severe than a material weakness, but it's important enough that we have to bring it to your attention. And we do have one significant deficiency, and it's related to adjustments, and we'll get there and I'll explain that in a few other pages. But I wanted to point out, Craig actually asked me to point out that the material weakness is worse, and you do not have any of those, or we did not note any of those in our audit. There is a significant deficiency. It's primarily related to significant adjustments that we had to make this year in order to complete the audit. If you'll turn over to page 67, this is your schedule of findings and question costs. As I mentioned, the financial statement auditor's report was unmodified. That's that first section there. And then we had no material weaknesses. We have one significant deficiency. That's why that box is, or that line says yes. There was no non-compliance noted related to the financial statements. And then the federal award section, there were no material weaknesses or significant deficiencies related to your federal grant awards. And so that opinion was also unmodified. The two major programs, because this also was a single audit this year, you had over almost $1.9 million in federal funds that were spent in fiscal year 22. And that's why you're required to have a single audit, because it was over $750,000 of federal funding. And the two major programs were your capitalization grants for drinking water state revolving funds. And then it was some ongoing COVID-19 funding, the coronavirus state and local fiscal recovery fund. So those two totaled almost $1.9 million. If you'll turn over to the next page, again, we're still on the schedule of findings and question cost on page 88 or 68, sorry. So the internal control deficiency that I mentioned had to do with adjusting journal entries that were necessary to correct and adjust account balances at year end. These entries, that next section there under effect, these entries included reclassifying accounts payable and cash, adjusting capital assets, deferred revenue, and grant revenue balances at year end. Our recommendation there is almost identical to what it has been in the past when we've had significant audit adjustments, is just for the city to continue implementing policies and procedures and maintain strong internal controls related to financial reporting and monitoring, including the preparation of reconciliations and recording of financial transactions and capital asset activity to produce more useful and accurate reports. So the wording is almost the same. However, there were several things this year that were different. I mentioned the lease standard, that was part of it, and that really didn't have much to do with those entries. But there were also several other unusual things that happened in this fiscal year. The conversion to the new OpenGov cloud platform, renumbering the chart of accounts, and getting all of the various modules that go with that accounting software to work properly, including bank reconciliations and capital assets. All of those things contributed to this finding and to us being here a little bit later this year. You also had, as I mentioned, significant grant funding this year. That requires extra testing. It requires additional entries. And then the completion of your large capital projects that I mentioned at the very beginning. And that those things all put together, it was like a perfect storm of trying to get the audit completed and get all of this information into this report where we could deliver it to you. If you'll turn over to page 71, when we have a finding, we are required to include management's response. And you'll see here your management's response to the finding. As I just mentioned, it was another challenging year for the city of Everman. The software conversion and implementation, supply issues, staffing shortages, and several things related to the change in the chart of accounts had to all be worked through both your systems and our audit work papers and testing. The city has performed numerous internal audits and process reviews that led to many account code corrections, reclassifications, and adjustments. as well as policy and procedure changes that to help prevent similar instances from happening in the future. We will continue to work with Susan and your staff to try and address issues as they come up, and try to get this to you sooner moving forward. There are a couple of loose letters in the back of your report. One of them is your management letter. We've really talked about all of those things already, so I'm not going to go back through them. It identifies adjusting journal entries, fixed assets, and there were also some budget variances. I understand it could be difficult to amend those budgets at times, but that's something we will also address and talk with Susan about and Craig about, and see if there's any way that maybe some line items can be adjusted without a full amendment, depending on what your policy states. The other letter is just required communications. There was not really anything in there other than the change in accounting standard and significant adjustments. So like I said, we had already been through all of those, so I wasn't going to go through them again in more detail. So that was a lot of information very quickly. So is there do you have any questions? Is there anything I can try to answer for you?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
So I see. It's a slick paper,
It is.
page 70. No. Oh, yellow page. 68.
Okay.
So you're saying that there is a material deficiency, which is
A
not the,
significant deficiency, which is lower than
right.
a material
a significant,
weakness.
okay, that seems backwards to me, but okay.
I know.
That's exactly why we asked her to clarify.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So we have a material deficiency, and you're saying it's basically because we shifted software and we were having issues with making sure things were in the right codes.
That was part of the reason that caused us to have additional audit entries. There were, like I said, I listed, there were several things. That was just one of them. That making sure that things were recorded correctly and in the correct accounts. Part of that was related to the conversion of the software and the change in the chart of accounts.
Okay. One more thing, just a personal thought. This is May 2nd.
Yes, ma'am.
And I understand you had some new stuff that you had to do, and we had some crossover changes and stuff. But we have usually gotten our report in March, and it is now May. Is there some reason it's 2 months later?
It's was April last year because of
Yes.
significant changes, and it just took longer to get it done this year. We would have had it ready at the last meeting, but several people were going to be out, and it didn't make sense for us to be here at the last meeting without your finance director not even here.
Okay. Is there any way we can, I mean, I know you have several cities that you work with, and I know it's a massive thing, but May seems like, even late April seems like really late to be getting this report.
Right. We will try again next year. And part of that is with our interim procedures that we do in the summer. I would like to spend some time. Susan had some questions on several of our audit entries. So I would like to spend some time now and not wait
Yes.
to address those so that we can make sure that any of those questions are answered, and that if there are any corrections that need to be made, not to this report, but in the adjustments in fiscal year 23, that we get those done now and not wait until August when we're out here, or February when we're out here.
Okay. All right.
So-
Thank you. That's it.
Okay.
Questions or comments? Okay, I guess we're good. So
Very good. Thank you very much. We appreciate your time. We appreciate your business.
Thank you.
Thank you.
next time is 3 members of T. Neal and Perkins here to give us a presentation.
Good.
Hello, Mayor and Council. My name is Andrew Luce. I'm with Tignall and Perkins. I've also been serving as the city's engineer since last July with Greg Saunders' retirement. With me tonight, I have Mandy Clark and Sawyer Manis. They serve in our water resources team. They've got about a 10-minute presentation to provide an overview of the drainage study that they will be preparing in coordination with city staff and with county staff, and then answer any questions you may have at this time. We're excited to be working on this project because it's the next step in providing a roadmap for improving the city's flooding issues. So with that, I will turn it over to Mandy.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As Andrew said, I'm Mandy Clark. I'm TNP's Director of Water Resources, and we're very excited to be here to work on this project. Sawyer is going to provide some details on the scope of the project, but generally, the purpose of the study is to remap the floodplain, identify flood risk associated with the floodplain, and then establish projects to mitigate any issues with the floodplain. So you do have the presentation at your place. So I will try to we'll try to identify what slide we are on as we go. So we're on slide 3. The purpose of the presentation is to tonight is to share the scope, as I mentioned, the details. We are going to have some significant public involvement pieces of this project. And so we wanted to gather your feedback, share with you our plan and see if you had any questions or suggestions on the public feedback portion. And then just, share where we're at with our schedule. So in 2018, y'all did have a significant flood, and the city staff has shared quite a bit of information on that they gathered. In 2018, 53 homes reported flooding. There could have been more, but 53 were that was the number that officially that flooded. And then 5 businesses flooded. That's about those businesses. 5 businesses had about 500,000 square feet of floor. Not all of that probably flooded, but that's a significant impact to your businesses if they get flooding like that. Of those 53 homes that flooded, 11 of them, I'm on slide
5.
11, they were affected by flooring and furniture. And then an additional 11 experienced minor flooding that would have been flooring, drywall, furniture, that sort of thing. And then of the 53, 31 had what they would qualify as major flooding. That would be, significant drywall, potentially structural flooding, vehicle flooding, and things like that. And you also had a significant flood in 2022. So I've talked a lot about structural flooding, but what's really almost as important is also flooding that threatens your traveling public. You could have roadway flooding that's also causing really bad problems, cars being swept off the road and that sort of thing. So how are we funding this? It is being funded through grant funding from their hazard mitigation grant program that the Texas Division of Emergency Management administers. The funding flows through Tarrant County. So our contract is with Tarrant County, but we will be partnering very closely with the city, and then Tarrant County will be assisting as well. So one thing that is important as we do flood planning like this is a lot of grant funds for physical improvements are based on having a plan in place, having cost estimates, knowing what those projects are and who they're helping. And so that's what this will help, because this is a plan. But what most people want to see is actual improvements and not just a plan. So this will be a step towards those improvements. And so you do have Chambers Creek that flows through your city, both the north and south branches of Chambers Creek. And so that is the main thing that we're going to be studying, and we'll be identifying flooding along the creek flooding and the roadway flooding. So Sawyer is now going to talk to you about kind of the details of the study.
Thanks, Mandy. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So as they mentioned, I'm Sawyer Manis. I'm the project manager at TNP, working on the H&H side of it. So I'm going to go over the scope of the study here, as well as kind of discuss the current process of the project, where we're at in it, and touch on the overall schedule. And I'm on slide 9 now. So one of the first steps is going to be going out and getting the channel geometry and roadway crossing informations. We're going to send our survey crews out there to get those elevations in the next few weeks. This will allow us to more accurately reflect your floodplain limits. And we'll discuss some of that more when we get to the modeling section here. The next step will be data acquisition, where we're going to work pretty closely with city staff to gather flood history information from the severity of the flooding, how frequently they've seen it happen. We'll meet with the public as well to kind of get the community side of it, how impacted they are, how frequently they're impacted. That'll be through public involvement, such as an open house and a survey that we'll send out. Next week, we're set to have our first city workshop where we'll meet with the city staff as well as emergency services to kind of catalog all the flooding that they have witnessed firsthand or have a backlog of history that they've already gathered. And then we'll meet with the public in, we're shooting for next month, mid-June, to have a first public open house where we're going to meet with the community, discuss with them firsthand on where they've seen flooding happening. Has the flooding affected them? What's the severity of that? And that way we can start kind of honing in on these flood prone locations throughout the city to kind of focus our study on those areas. We're still going to focus on the city as a whole, but those flood prone locations are going to be our kind of main priority. And now going to slide 12, if you guys are following along. We'll, as part of the public open house, prior to that, we're going to send out a flood survey to the communities within and adjacent to the floodplain. This will allow us to kind of identify those flood prone locations again for some people that may not be able to make the public open house. Really, we're just trying to catalog as much information for the city to have in the future on where the flooding is happening. Then we'll get into kind of the H&H modeling of it. It's kind of the bulk of the study where we're determining how much water is coming through the city of Everman. How is that water affecting properties? What are the extents of the floodplain? Things like that. You can see here in this image, this is kind of an image from a previous project we did where you can see the purple and green is what FEMA has mapped as their floodplain limits. And the yellow outline is what our analysis showed. There you can see some properties are coming into the floodplain that were not there previously, and then even some are being taken out of the floodplain due to the additional information and the just updated study. After gathering all that information from the staff, the public, as well as the modeling efforts, we're going to identify those target areas of concerns and help prioritize those areas based on number of properties affected, the severity of those flooding, as well as how frequently that occurs. With those flood prone locations identified, we will then identify at least 2 alternatives to help mitigate those properties affected by flooding. That could be a combination of channel and bridge improvements or culvert improvements, regional detentioning, and if it needs to be a potential buyout option. A cost association, a conceptual cost will be associated with each of those improvements as part of the study as a whole. And then we'll compile all of that information in a report that will be presented to the city and county. Once we get the feedback on that and kind of finalize the findings and report, we will then present it again to council, as well as look to update them on the status of the project and kind of identify where we go from there. So the project status, kind of where we're at right now, the H&H modeling to determine how much water and what the extent that is currently ongoing. We have our staff workshop set for next week on May 9th. The survey is set to get going on the channel at the end of the month, end of June. with a public open house set for mid-June right now. We haven't set down a date yet, but we should have that identified here soon. So here's the overall schedule. You kind of mentioned a lot of this project's already underway, and a lot of that's being driven by the grant schedule. The grant requires this project to be completed by the end of the year. So you can see here on the schedule and I haven't been good about telling you what slide, but slide 18, a lot of this stuff is overlapping. We've already started the H&H modeling that should be wrapped up by the end of the summer in August, with our proposed improvements or mitigation measures wrapping up by the end of October. So it's a tight schedule, but we feel like we're already kind of ahead of schedule there and should be able to meet it with little issue. So now I'll hand it back over to Mandy.
So again, I just wanted to just let you know how excited we are to be a part of this. We believe it is very important to the city of Everman. We know that there's been a lot of flooding in the community and how important that is, and how much it can improve a community to solve those problems. So we will just with that answer any questions that you have or gather any input, feedback that you have on any of it. Thank you.
I do have a question. Yeah, are you able to go back to the H&H modeling slide real quick? So I think this is a good example. On the H&H modeling slide, I've noticed on this example, the floodplain seems to expand significantly.
Yes.
And I think that's probably what we're expecting to see here, is that the floodplain is going to be larger than what FEMA has identified it as.
It's likely.
So when you do that H&H modeling, will a part of the study include potential causes of what may have caused that expansion of the floodplain?
It will. So we will
Okay.
look at existing conditions like land development, different things can impact your flood extent. That can be, land development over time. It can be erosion of the channel. Those are kind of the two bigger things, and just improvements that have been made that have affected it.
Yeah, so Craig, we're going to compare what our findings are as far as the amount of water and everything, and compare that with what FEMA has mapped. So we're analyzing all those models that FEMA has on their in their records and comparing that with what we.
Okay.
And you just said comparing it to what you find. What you find is going to include the citizens who never seem to get heard when FEMA comes out to do stuff. I mean, we've got people who are flooded and it's like, oh, that didn't happen to you. Well, these people are in the second rebuilding of their homes because of the flooding. So it's super important that we get the citizens involved in this because they know if they've been flooded or not.
Yeah, and part of that is some of these properties may not even realize they're in the floodplain, similar to what
Exactly.
Craig alluded to where now they can at least have the information needed to where they can go and get flood
Right.
insurance to help cover them.
And 37 warehouses that are going up around us. You've got, I know you will, I'm preaching to the choir, I understand. I just have to say it.
Absolutely. And so,
Please look at them in their retention ponds.
part of this study is going to be prioritizing the project list. So we're going to come up with several projects. The H&H modeling is a part of it, but we're going to come up with a matrix and different data points. So feedback from citizens, the severity, the frequency, the cost, the bang for the buck, let's say, as far as this project will have this level of impact. So there's going to be several different data points we're going to be looking at when we make final recommendations on the priority of the project.
Okay, and just for someone who doesn't know, could you explain what the H&H model is?
Yeah, so in simple terms, it's hydrology and hydraulics. It's basically how much water is coming through the city of Everman, and then
That's the hydrology.
that's the hydraulics.
Okay.
And the hydraulics is what is that water doing? How's it behaving? What's the extent of flooding in the city? And
I mean, where's it going?
Yep.
Up and down the streets and
exactly.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
And the velocity, what kind of.
Yes.
The characteristics of that water.
Are you interested in people's videos of watching the water during flood stages?
Absolutely.
I can help you with that. Okay, I think that's it for me.
We are kind of surrounded by Fort Worth, and Fort Worth has been doing a lot of building. Will it cover close to portions of that? Well, I know you're not familiar with Forest Hill Drive or whatever, but they're really building theirs up so that it doesn't flood. So that means it's like gonna be pushing the water even that much more, in other words. So will you be looking at that portion as well?
Yeah, we're looking at the Chambers Creek watershed as a whole. So that includes all the area in Fort Worth that is sending water into the city of Everman. We're analyzing all of that, and we've been working with the city of Fort Worth to gather their models and development they've allowed to occur to incorporate that in our analysis.
Okay, good. South of the city and north of the city, all
Yes,
the way
ma'am.
around. Okay. Good question,
All
Johnny.
contributing factors.
Yep, please make up some contributing factors. Come up with some goodies. I mean, this is our one good shot. I didn't mean make up as in fabricate. Ideas, please. This is our one good shot at this.
On your public involvement pieces, is there anything specific you're wanting to hear from the public? I mean, are we just going to be looking for their experiences? Are you wanting them to provide photos, videos? If they have history, because we have some residents who have been here 50, 60, 70 years. 2018 was just the most recent major flood, but we've had flooding incidents prior to that. So, I mean, do you want to know information going far back?
Yeah, I mean, any information that they'll be able to provide us, I think it'll be helpful for you guys at the city,
Sure.
and it'll help us that maybe this property didn't flood in 2018, but maybe it flooded in 2002 or 1980. Those are things that we'll want to look at in our analysis.
Great.
That's great.
And we'll work with y'all on what's going to be in that survey, the questions, what we're trying to collect as well. So that'll be kind of a collaborative process.
And the public feedback kind of helps us twofold. Number one, it helps us kind of target areas to look at, because we're planning to have the open house style meeting where they can look at a map and circle it and say, here's what I saw, and they can send us pictures, show us pictures, tell us their story. But it also lets us, as we're doing the H&H, because the H&H is map. It is looking at an area on a map and how much flow that contributes to your creek, and doing the math and running it through the models. It is a very objective thing. But the anecdotal, the stories that the citizens tell us help us validate that, so that, you know, a lot of times we'll do a model, and whatever we show, people will say that is exactly, you know, what we're seeing. And that helps us. And if they say, oh, I haven't seen that, that helps us too. So
Right.
it's helpful on the front end, and it's helpful on the back end.
Okay.
So.
Excellent.
The, sort of, it says paper and online. The paper, I'm trying to remember from our last meeting, but will be mailed to the residents, or they be delivered?
We were gonna do mail to the people in the floodplain and adjacent to the floodplain. And they can do it either on paper, but we'll also have a QR code if they want to do it online. We'll take it however they will give it to us. And we were also, we're going to work with the staff on any, you know, if you need a bilingual needs or anything like that. So we were going to work closely with the staff, because they know, you know, the citizens the best and what would work best for your people.
Yes.
That's for them. These kind of fill out this form.
Right.
Having the better solutions when they go.
And we'll probably, once we roll it out, we may ask y'all to announce it at council meeting and we'll put social media and things like that, where however we can get the word out, we'll do what we can.
We got a bunch.
Mindy, when is the cutoff for the water bill inserts? Do you know? 2 weeks before, so about the 15th of the month. If we can get those forms by the 15th of the month, we can include it as a water bill insert. With our water bill, hopefully let all the residents get it, so it's out there. That may be easier than having to try to identify addresses and everything. We've already got it.
We'll cover the entire thing.
Yeah.
Yes, we really would like for the survey to be in Spanish, please. For sure. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
One last question, sorry. So on your mitigation analysis, is this going to include only major mitigation projects, or will we be able to include minor mitigation projects that we would be able to handle within city operations, not relying on federal funding and this kinds of things? I mean, what kind of scale of improvements can we do?
I was gonna say, I mean, it may run from small projects that we can do internally in the city to larger projects. I mean, it won't be just major projects. We'll be focusing on the top priority areas, and the answer may be simpler or smaller, we hope, than something like a large project.
Okay, to follow on that, we want to know everything you find, even the teensy weensy ones, because somebody's been affected by that at some point, and we're talking homeowners' dollars, their houses, pictures, blah, 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 totally destroyed.
Mhm.
And we want to know every single teensy thing you find, please. Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation and the slides.
Thank you.
yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Next item is citizens' comments. Do we have any? No, okay. No discussion item. Next item is consideration possible action. Item A. Amend previous allocation of water and wastewater funds for the acquisition of a jetter.
All right, so last council meeting, you likely recall that we approved roughly $60,000, $63,000 for the acquisition of a jetter. That was through buy board. The jetter unfortunately was already sold. And they don't have any more in stock, so we were not able to acquire that specific jetter. He has gone back out, and there are two other options that we are able to obtain through buy board. One is a comparable option, but it does not have a camera. It is $16,000 more, comes in at $79,000, just over $79,000. The other option is it's called a pipe hunter. It comes in at $21,000 more, and that one does come equipped with everything. Gilbert is recommending that we go with the pipe hunter, the more expensive one. We do know it costs more. However, we're spending probably $20,000-$30,000 a year in contractor fees right now. Just getting contractors to come out. So my recommendation would be, with the situation that we have with the water fund, to go ahead and move forward with the $84,000 pipe hunter. But we will need an amendment from council on the approval of the allocation to do that.
How much was the other one?
amount Previously,
Oh, I'm sorry. Say again.
what was the amount previously?
63,000 was the approval amount at the last council meeting. This one's 84,000, so it's a difference of roughly $21,000.
Has the $84,000 one, has it got everything we need?
It has everything.
And it lights your cigarette? It does everything?
It does everything.
Okay.
Yes.
Do we have the
I
money?
don't, they don't smoke cigarettes around the sewer
Okay,
lines. though.
probably not. Does it, never mind. Do we have the money for it?
Within the water fund, I believe we're comfortable to do that. Yeah. It's going to save us money in the long
Yes,
run. So it's a
understood.
good investment at this
Just
time.
want to make sure we got enough to
Yes.
cover it up front. I want to write a
Yes.
hot check.
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Any other discussion? I'll
So-
entertain a motion.
I would make the motion for 85.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll entertain a motion.
I move we approve the
Jetter,
what?
jetter.
The water, I move we approve $85,000 of waste.
I'm sorry. Can you move to amend the allocation?
I move that we amend.
Yeah.
What is this?
Allocation of water and
Okay,
wastewater
okay.
funds.
I'm looking for a word that's not there. I move that we amend the allocation of water and wastewater funds for the acquisition of a jetter to $85,000.
Second.
Motion made second. Any further discussion?
When will they start using it?
Pretty quickly, almost as
they
soon as
get
we,
it, right?
as soon as we can get it. They've got some jobs pending on it right now. So
Well, get
We need-
trained on it.
Yeah.
So, would you poll the council?
Place one. Place three,
Aye.
Place 4,
Aye.
place 5,
Aye.
place 6,
Aye.
Mayor,
Aye.
motion carried.
Executive session, we have none. So next item, city manager's report.
I've got a couple things just to update council on. So the police department did obtain the bicycles and ATVs. Thanks to Sergeant Kilgore, Corporal Patton, and Chief Watley. They have been painted and have been upfitted. We have one complete out front for you that you can check out if you want to on your way out. Decals and all, so it's nice and pretty. We have worked with the attorneys and we will, at the next council meeting, have a resolution for you to consider that will name the inclusive playground that's being installed after Noel. So that's coming next meeting. Construction has begun for the National Fitness Campaign Fitness Court over here. So if you've seen the crews in Pittman Park yesterday and today installing a concrete pad, that concrete pad has been installed. It has to sit and cure for 28 days before they can install the workout equipment on top of it. So it's going to sit there for about a month with no activity while that concrete cures until the equipment installers can come out and get that going. So we should have that probably around July or August. I would expect to start seeing some media and social media advertisement regarding it so we can make sure that the public's aware of it. We received today the hot asphalt mix trailer that council approved last meeting. That's been delivered. And we received the heavy roller. They are absolutely beautiful pieces of equipment. Looking forward to doing some great street repairs with it.
Looking forward to it, yes.
Our crews are going to be receiving training on it later this week, and starting next week, they're going to be doing some field training on it. So out in the field, actually doing some repairs with it. So we're excited about that. Community Safety Committee, we've now got 4 applicants for the Community Safety Advisory Committee. We're still needing at least one more. Obviously, who gets appointed to that board is completely up to you, but we're certainly looking for members of the community to apply to be a part of that board. So if we can get some encouragement, try to get some recruiting out there, that'd be great. Lastly, the mobile food truck park. We began the advertisement for it yesterday, and within the first day, we've received, I think, 5 applications for permits for various food trucks. So we are putting them through the process right now and expect to have them hopefully up and running there in that park within the next week. As long as they pass all of their health and safety inspections and submit all the documents, really the ball's in their court at this time. So everything's chugging right along there and looking good. Other than that, I don't have anything else, Mary.
You want to go over what's going on across the street? Council chambers?
Yeah, I can. We started demolition of the council chambers to convert that into some additional office space like what we talked about. Couple of problems. When they removed the old dais, the carpet that was under, apparently they didn't remove the dais when they installed the new carpet. So the carpet that was underneath it was the original carpet. It's a beautiful shade of blue and orange and yellow. It's hideous. So that was still underneath there. It's got the nice little cutout design of it, but running into some problems there we're going to have to address, but it is moving along. We have started on that project so we can get the office space built. And then we'll take any assets that were in there that aren't of use to the city anymore and try to auction those off to utilize those proceeds towards that project. So we'll have additional office space, additional lobby space, because we have just entirely outgrown City Hall and we've entirely outgrown the police department. We're about outgrowing the fire department already. So we're just outgrowing stuff. So we've needed this space and we're moving right along with it.
All right, mayor's report, I don't have anything. So everything I was going to talk about, Craig talked about, so we're good. So with that being said, the time is 7:24 and we are adjourned.
Hit the green.
Yeah.